Hello, my name is Dr. Cameron Jones. I'm an environmental microbiologist. And if you look behind me, you will see a bra hanging up outside my biohazard hood. You're probably thinking, what on earth is he doing with a lady's bra? But you might be familiar with the work that we do with indoor air quality and measuring mould levels throughout people's homes. And I'm often contacted with questions regarding personal property. That includes bedding, linen, couches, soft furnishing, and of course, clothes. Because in many cases, people's water damaged building interiors are in bathrooms, and these are often right next door to walk-in robes, which of course contain a lot of porous personal property. As well, a couple of weeks ago, Laura Henshaw, a popular influencer here in Australia, was discussing on her podcast how often she washes her bra.
I genuinely don't wash my...
No, how often do you actually?
Probably once a month, I reckon.
Once a month? Laura!
It is harder to wash a bra.
I never follow the
I also
instructions.
feel like you need, the longer the life of the bra, the less you wash it.
One of the topics that was covered during that podcast was essentially focusing on whether or not Laura was washing her bra often enough. So I thought that I would do some simple microbiology experiments to determine what microbes are present on bras and similar personal items of attire that are used to see if we can get an indication of exactly what types of microbes are present on these garments. And what I've done is that I'm using a range of rapid Petri plate media that I've just picked up. These are from 3M, a company, and they allow us to do exactly what we do with classic microbiology, but just speed up the process. Because a lot of these Petri plates usually take 5 to 7 days before we can get an identification of the various different types of yeast and fungi. And I use these every single day in our professional work with examination of water damaged building interiors. But when you're looking at working out exactly what microflora are present on things like bras, we need to use some different types of tests. So we're not measuring the concentration of microbes in the air. We are determining what the concentration of residual bacteria, yeast, and fungi might be on these bras. And so what I've done is I have asked my family for used bras which have not been washed. Now, I'm not going to say anything more about that, but I have been provided with a small sample for us to test today. And so obviously we have a classic nude bra, we have a lacy bra, we have various types of sports bras and attire. And what we're going to do is I'm going to use these 3M rapid Petri plate discs to determine what the level of contamination is. And this one is for yeast, and this one is for aerobic bacteria, and this one is for Salmonella. We're also going to be looking at Staphylococcus as well. I'm not sure what to expect, but we're going to find out today. Keep watching. When Laura Henshaw did her podcast, she really opened up Pandora's box because it begs the question, how often should you be washing items such as bras and underpants? And what happens if you don't wash these frequently? What's the probability that they're going to contain bacteria, yeast, and fungi that could be potentially pathogenic? Is there a risk of infection? If so, how probable is that? And what do these garments, when they're, for example, placed in your dirty laundry basket, what do they actually contain? So this is the purpose of the experiment that we're doing today. And I'm going to be using these rapid swabs to enable me to sample areas of the bra that are most likely to have accumulated sweat and dampness, which would be the perfect breeding ground for a lot of these bacteria, yeast, and fungi. And obviously, yeast and mould skin infections are incredibly common. Just think of athlete's foot and any sort of unusual itches that you might experience. But Similarly, staphylococcus and a range of other bacteria can also cause problems. Just think of an infection, and those are the types of things that we want to minimize. So no one wants to be, in a sense, reusing an undergarment that contains these bacteria, yeast, and fungi. And so in a sense, we're going to be moving towards some practical tips regarding washing and what temperature and disinfection protocols you should be considering. But really the purpose of this is to determine whether or not we can recover any of these target microorganisms which could be typical of infections found on people, and whether or not there is a connection with the undergarment that the person may or may not be wearing. So I'm going to get along and do these experiments now. Follow along now. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to activate the swab, which is pretty easy. Essentially, this contains a sterile medium which is going to allow me to dampen the swab, which I'm then going to use to sample this particular bra. And so it's a simple matter then to swab this over areas of the inside surface of the bra that would be in contact with a person. And then after sampling the bra, I'm able to put this back into the receptacle and you want to dislodge whatever bacteria, yeast, and fungi are present on the swabbed material surface into the medium, which we're then going to use to apply to these Petri film plates. And as I said, we have specific ones for yeast and mould, another type for aerobic bacteria, and another type for pathogens that affect your gastrointestinal tract like Salmonella. And I don't know what we're going to see, but we're going to find out now. And so it's then a simple matter for me to apply this liquid to my total yeast and mould plate. And so all I need to do is carefully put my swab back into the receptacle and spread this over the window of the Petri film specific for yeast and mould. Now, I'm going to hold this up gently, but that's as simple as it takes to test a bra for yeast and fungi. We're now going to test that same bra for what sorts of bacteria might be present. And again, we wet the swab. Be careful not to lose any of the liquid. This is all sterile. Again, we swab the inside of the bra, especially those areas that are most likely to retain sweat from the wearer. We shake that around, move that out of the way so you can see. And now, all we need to do is inoculate the aerobic bacteria. And this is really important because this will pick up any of those microbes like Staphylococcus, Streptococcus, any of these aerobic microorganisms that cause acute infections in people. And again, we just spread this over the growth window. And now we've inoculated to test for aerobic bacteria on this particular lacy bra. Who said science isn't fun? Put the used swabs in the container. Now I will test for Salmonella. Now, I'm not expecting to see Salmonella, but I wanted to test for it anyway because it's an interesting exercise. And of course, Salmonella is one of those microorganisms that are most likely to be encountered in kitchens and in food preparation area where there has been inadequate hand hygiene and people have been handling items like raw chicken and other types of meats. So at this point in time, we will now test this bra out to see whether or not it contains any Salmonella. So we shake that around to distribute any material that we have recovered from these porous and semi-porous garments. And we will now carefully inoculate the Petri film. This is slightly different to the previous two Petri films that were specific for yeast and mould or aerobic colonies, but the principle is the same. We put the window down and hopefully you can see this to some extent. We just spread that across the viewing window, which will create the region of interest that we are going to inspect after a period of time has elapsed. We put these in the incubator and we will be using these to count any colonies that develop. And so again, this Petri film is for Salmonella. The other two are for aerobic bacteria and total yeast and mould. And these are very useful tools that we microbiologists use for environmental screening. And this is a very useful technique for recovery of environmental pathogens that may or may not be present in any specific region of interest or environment of interest. And in this exercise, we want to know whether or not it is important to wash your bra frequently. My family have told me that these particular bras that they have given me to sample probably haven't been washed for at least 1 to 3 months. We'll see what grows. Take it from there. We'll now sample the nude bra. I understand this has been worn a number of times without washing. So we will sample this now. Again, we will start the series of Petri film plates looking for residual yeast and mould before moving on to the aerobic bacteria or Salmonella. These types of experiments yield very interesting results. And I'll show you after we incubate these. I'll turn this to the camera so that you can see that all I need to do is transfer what is called a diluent media. That is the medium which supports live culture of yeast and fungi. Now, all we need to do is carefully spread this over the Petri film. Like so. That is ready to be put into the incubator, and we'll see what grows over the next 48 to 60 hours. Now I'll just continue this video. Now take another swab. For this particular bra, choose different regions. This is going to sample next for what aerobic bacteria are present. And I'm really interested in whether or not we recover microbes like E. coli, Staphylococcus, Streptococcus, Bacillus, because all of these could cause direct infection in persons who may be immunocompromised or may have an underlying skin condition which could cause an irritation event, which would then predispose the person to acquiring an infection in chafed areas of skin. So these Petri film plates are really easy to use. Now we'll sample the bra for the presence or absence of Salmonella. Now I did mention that I'd be very surprised to recover these microorganisms, but you just never know. I don't know where the person who was wearing this before it was supplied to me has been. So we shall see what grows on the culture medium. Again, like all things in science, careful, considered movements are ideal for this sort of work. We just have to repeat this process now for each of the different types of bras. As you can see, we have successfully sampled that bra for now Salmonella, aerobic bacteria, and yeast and mould. We'll get these into the incubator and move on with the other types of bras and sports attire. Now I'm just going to go through and I've prepared the rest of the Petri film plates. I'm now just going to sample some of these other items that I've been supplied with. This is a bikini type bra, like anyone would consider wearing at the beach. We'll see whether or not there's any residual yeast, mould, other types of potentially pathogenic aerobic bacteria, or even Salmonella. You obviously want to shake the swab reasonably vigorously so that you can have adequate transfer of any of the region of interest microbes into the diluent, which is then carefully poured onto the Petri film, which essentially is self-gelling and contains adequate nutrient selective media for the different types of microorganisms that we are seeking to recover. Obviously, looking at this part of the experiment under time lapse would be a little bit more fun, because careful sample collection leads to the ability to carefully control as many variables as possible and get good recovery of any potential microbes.